E pluribus unum. It's found on our coins alongside In God We Trust and Liberty. It translates roughly to out of many one, or from many one. In a previous installment, we talked about liberty. And liberty goes hand in hand with E pluribus unum to create unique American values. As Dennis Prager said, out of many one, meaning we don't care where you come from, what your race is, what your religion is, what your nationality is. Come here, work with us, help make us successful, and you're one of us. You're an American. Liberals, however, think a little bit differently. They think more in terms of ex uno pluribus, which would be from one, many. They're intent in dividing us into as many subgroups and categories as possible, and then making us have animosity and hatred and anger towards all these other different groups. Why would they do that? We often hear that liberals are for the little guy. They're for the working class. They want to help the downtrodden and the poor. But what help does it provide by creating animosity between one group and another? What it really does is provides an opportunity for them to say, hey, now that there's a problem between this group and that group, we will step in and we will fix it for you. But you've got to give us, the government, more power so that we can take care of all these problems. And then we grow the power of the government and we grow the size of the government, and it's a never-ending cycle. Now here's a prime example of that in play. I'm sure you've heard many times, you may have even repeated it yourself on an occasion. And our president has even said these very words, that we just want the wealthy to pay their fair share. And have you ever heard, when you've heard a politician, including the president, have you ever heard them then say, and this is how much they're paying now, and that's clearly not their fair share? No, you haven't, because it would defeat the purpose of the argument. The whole argument is based on an emotional response. They want you to get angry and say, you know what, I'm not wealthy, yeah, those guys should be paying more. They need to pay their fair share. After all, it's fair, right? In 2012, the top 20% of wage earners in the United States, the top 20%, so these are the guys that fall into the wealthy category. The top 20% paid 68% of the income tax revenue. 68%. And on the other side, nearly 50% of working-age Americans paid zero taxes. So under what possible rational definition could you give me that the wealthy are not paying their fair share? In fact, if you really start to think about it, you've got 50% of the people who are not paying any taxes, yet they still benefit from roads and bridges and schools and having emergency services, all the things that our taxes pay for, and yet they don't pay a single penny towards the upkeep and maintenance of those items. It definitely seems that maybe they're the ones not paying their fair share. But that's not the point. It's to create animosity, to create anger. It's the same thing with racism and religion, to try to create problems that then the government can then solve for us. Frank Watto is a perfect example of this e pluribus unum American value. Though for a time he and his family were treated unfairly by our government. He didn't define himself as a victim and look for help and handouts. Frank immigrated to the United States in 1922 from Japan. He was at the age of 13, and a few years later he and his wife started farming in California. And they did that until the outbreak of World War II. When, if you were an American of Japanese descent and you lived along the coast, you had two choices. You either had to go and live in an internment camp, or you had to be relocated somewhere farther inland. Frank Wada and his family ended up in Idaho, and there started farming on 160 acres of rented land. He worked hard at that, continued farming until 1972, when he passed the farm off to his son Albert, and it was now had 400 acres of farmland that they were farming. Albert went to work with the same effort that his father had shown, was working to make himself successful, and in the result, make us successful as a nation. Today, Wada Farms has over 30,000 acres of irrigated farmland and has become a huge success, a benefit to the community and to the nation, providing food and jobs for many, many people. And despite being treated unfairly as Americans of Japanese descent, they worked hard. They were one. Now, we've heard before about this e pluribus unum. You may have heard in schools about the great melting pot. That's the same concept, that we may be different, but we are all in the same pot, and we create one unique American culture. Today, more than ever, we need that value re-enshrined in our society. If we want to be strong as a country, we must have some unity. Today, more than ever, we do not need hyphenated Americans. We need Americans.